Since 1975, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has paved the way for diplomacy and economic cooperation amongst its 15 member states. ECOWAS was originally established as an economic and monetary union to improve the living standards of its people. However, in the 1990s, multiple civil wars, humanitarian crisis, political and governance challenges in the region made it necessary for ECOWAS to diffuse conflicts and help restore order and stability to member states. This led the organization to adopt a number of legal frameworks which can be referenced in the event of any outbreak of conflict in the member states. Some of these legal documents include the 1993 Revised Treaty, the 1999 Protocol relating to the mechanism for conflict prevention, management, resolution, peacekeeping and security, and the 2001 Supplementary Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance.
This is particularly urgent in the light of the evolving security challenges in our region. These challenges included radicalization and extremism, terrorism, inter-ethnic and community-based violence, whose combined effect has led to humanitarian consequences characterized by loss of human life, internal displacement, refugee flows, and the disruption of social services.
In 2008, one of ECOWAS's decision-making organs, the Mediation and Security Council, adopted the ECOWAS Conflict Prevention Framework, otherwise called the ECPF.
Vous savez, le mécanisme de prévention de la CEDEAO est contenu dans le cadre de prévention des conflits. Et ce mécanisme a plusieurs volets. Volet de diplomatie préventive. Nous avons pu installer au niveau du département des affaires politiques, paix et sécurité de la Commission une division de la médiation et de la facilitation. Cette division est fonctionnelle sur le terrain et il faut reconnaître aussi que nous avons installé le secrétariat du cadre de prévention des conflits. Sur ces bases et après plusieurs travaux qui ont porté leurs fruits, nous avons récemment publié le plan d'activité du cadre de prévention des conflits qui fait son petit bonhomme de chemin et qui a besoin de financement sur tous les plans pour pouvoir évoluer. Voilà globalement ce que je peux vous dire par rapport à ce cadre de prévention des conflits qui a été mis en place par la CEDEAO.
This ecosystem is encapsulated by the 15 elements of the ECPF. 1. Early warning. 2. Preventive diplomacy. 3. Democracy and political governance. 4. Human rights and rule of law. 5. Media. 6. Natural resource governance. 7. Cross-border initiatives. 8. Security governance. 9. Practical disarmament. 10. Women, peace and security. 11. Youth empowerment. 12. ECOWAS standby force. 13. Humanitarian assistance. 14. Peace education, that is a culture of peace. And 15. Enabling mechanisms.
The ECOWAS Conflict Prevention Framework has been adopted in 2008 and is a tool to operationalize the protocol related to conflict prevention, conflict management, peacekeeping in the region, what we call in common language, the mechanism.
The ECPF is, we're proud to say, one is very associated with it in the sense that we helped in crafting it. It sought to put at the center of ECOWAS's interventions conflict prevention.
The ECPF combines the principles, instruments and mechanisms for ECOWAS peace and security interventions listed in earlier frameworks and included the importance of a multi-sectoral and multi-actor coordinated efforts to not only respond to crisis, but also prevent them.
ECOWAS had been known prior to 2008 when the ECPF was adopted, had been known much more for intervening in conflict states, in crisis situations. But the ECPF sought to, depart from that reactive mode to actually preventing conflicts.
When you look at the security challenges that we're facing now, I think if we focus more on the prevention aspect, it will be better for our region because the cost of response is enormous.
In a nutshell, that is what the ECOWAS conflict prevention is trying to operationalize, the early warning and the response aspect. When we are talking of 15 components, starting from early warning, we will consider the security governance, the political governance, the media, the role of women in peace and security, the youth empowerment, the humanitarian aspect of conflict, what the role of ECOWAS in assisting refugees, for example. What is the role in terms of education for peace in the region?
It's been an ambitious document. It's been quite ambitious.
The ECPF is brought to life through the work of different stakeholders in the ECOWAS Commission, member states, and many civil society organizations.
This and some other things also led us to the time in we started to think that we should put a more robust mechanism, in order to better link early warning, and early response.
It's when others fail in terms of prevention, diplomatic solutions. Then we come as Directorate of Peacekeeping to plan and deploy military missions.
Even though conflicts do exist, we know that people are still on the move. Conflicts could be out of movement, of mobility of people. It could be even mobility of goods, anything at all, of the likes. So at least we work hand in hand with them. Where our role is needed or where our skills are needed, that's the Directorate of Free Movement of Persons. We at least join hands with them.
The resolution, UN Council Resolution 1325, was passed in October 2000. And the reason why we had that resolution was to really focus on the roles and contribution of women in peace and security. Not just looking at women as victims of security, but how they can be part of the peace and security architecture at the regional and national level.
We're also looking at cross-border cooperation, where member states with contiguous borders, ideally, should be able to have common amenities in the areas of either security, we're looking at infrastructure.
In the checkered world of peace and security interventions, there are, however, great challenges observed since the adoption of the ECPF, including those that are very pressing.
I think lack of adequate resources was one of the high points of the challenges we faced during that time.
We have a community levy, which member states are supposed to pay. They don't pay as they should, but even if all the member states pay, we would still not have enough. So we still have that challenge. The greatest challenge we had was lack of resources.
Delay in decision making, because the heads of states usually take their time. You'll see a crisis, you make the right and appropriate recommendations, but before action is taken, it takes a lot of time. If you remember in Mali, despite the fact that ECOWAS was ready, had deployed, had met and agreed to deploy, had all the chiefs of defense staff meetings held, strategy mapped out, but before they could take action, France forces were already there, and it somehow diminished the effort of ECOWAS.
A lot of promises were made back then, I remember. A lot of promises are still made, to fund the operationalization of the framework, but a lot of promises just stay at the promises level. They're not fulfilled.
Some of the issues come up unexpected, on emergency. And on those occasions, these are not things that are budgeted for. For example, human beings cannot be predicted. And what you tend to see in most member countries is that the oppositions are much more resistant now. So member states often, when they undergo elections per se, there's usually tension, and then you see that in those instances, we have to make sure that we get the normal finance, the normal money. Why I said it's very expensive is that you might occasion have to hire a special flight to go, because you are inviting a former head of state to lead the mission.
The challenges do not end there. There are other institutional problems in member states.
For peace to really happen, we need to address the structural issues of governance, poverty, and all those issues that are sort of, not helping. The more steps, like when in the issue of peace and security, you take 3 steps and you take 1 back because the fundamentals are not being addressed.
We don't have the real intervention up to now when we are talking of the conflicts regarding farmers and the agro-pastoralist conflict. Is still a challenge for the region. We have not found a solution. The climate change is a challenge.
You'll be talking about farmer herder problems, which has ravaged, it's affected the entire sub-region.
So for example, if you look at the Sahel region now that we are talking, we're seeing insecurity. That means it is fueling food insecurity, it is fueling malnutrition, it is fueling displacement, increased displacement of people. Now, when you look at the high number of people that are displaced, the most vulnerable within that population are women and children.
That might also lead you to the next question, possibly, that how are we resolving it? One way of resolving it is through the regional economic communities, by having discussions like ECOWAS. ECOWAS is the Central African, where Chad, Gabon, Cameroon are located, and for ECOWAS. And since 2015, we've already been having meetings together. We've also have what they call the anti-terrorism strategy here. We've also have policies working along with our other directories on how to reduce violent extremism.
In the course of 10 years, some of these peace and security interventions have been successful.
During my tenure, that was 2012 to 2016, as Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, was when we had some of the most challenging security situations in the sub-region for this decade. And that was the crisis in Mali and also the crisis in Guinea-Bissau. You will remember there was an uprising in Mali, there was a coup d'etat. In fact, there was coup d'etat in both states. And ECOWAS intervention led to military missions to both countries. I'm happy to say that at least they were both successful and the countries were back on track.
ECOWAS has been the most successful regional economic commission in Africa. ECOWAS, when it has been on several occasions, not just been able to mediate peace, but they've also been able to whip people in line.
It was through the early warning and response system that we were able to detect that following the overthrow of Gaddafi in Libya, there was movement of arms and people to Mali, and there was likely to be uprising in the areas where they had already had security situations before. I will also say preventive diplomacy, because we deployed a lot of high-level missions to go and talk in both Mali and Guinea-Bissau in order to have success. The military missions were okay because they restored peace and order, but the preventive diplomacy also did a lot of underground work. 2 heads of states were appointed as mediators, as you remember. That is the former president of Burkina Faso, Blaise Compaoré to mediate in the crisis in Mali, as well as the president of Guinea-Conakry, that is Alpha Condé, to be the lead mediator in Guinea-Bissau, with Nigeria actively supporting. In fact, Nigeria, as the co-mediator, did quite a lot of work in restoring peace and security in Guinea-Bissau.
Depuis que je suis ici il y a 1 an, nous avons entrepris de grandes actions de prévention des conflits dans plusieurs États. La Sierra Leone, où il y a eu des élections générales, dont les élections présidentielles. Le Mali, nous avons fait récemment des élections présidentielles au Sénégal, au Nigeria, avec 83 millions d'électeurs. Nous avons fait des élections, nous avons suivi des élections législatives au Togo, en Guinée-Bissau. Voilà les grandes actions sur le plan de la gouvernance sociopolitique que nous avons menées depuis que nous sommes là.
The most successful intervention has been that of the Gambia. You will recall December 2016, His Excellency President Yahya Jammeh contested with Adama Barrow, and apparently it was won by Adama Barrow.
The Republic of Gambia, a country in Western Africa that is almost entirely surrounded by Senegal with the exception of its western coastline along the Atlantic Ocean. It is the smallest country within mainland Africa with a population of just over 1.8 million people. In July of 1994, Yahya Jammeh, a junior army officer, led a coup to overthrow the government of Dawda Jawara. 2 years later, he succeeded himself as president in an election and remained in power until December 2016. In an election that took place on the 1st of December and, in a surprise result, Jammeh was defeated by Adama Barrow, leading a coalition of opposition parties. At first, Jammeh stated that he would not contest the result.
This is transparent, this is the will of Allah, and as a Muslim I accept it in good faith.
Although Jammeh initially conceded defeat, on 9 December 2016, he rejected the result, citing unacceptable abnormalities.
I hereby announce to you Gambians my total rejection of the electoral results and thereby annulling the elections in its entirety.
He subsequently announced that he had annulled the result pending a new vote. He then filed a petition with the Supreme Court of the Gambia to contest the result. Jammeh appointed 6 new judges to the Supreme Court, having sacked all but 1 in 2015.
There was a constitutional crisis, you remember. So ECOWAS, of course, part of our mandate is to ensure that there's constitutionality and constitutional rule in all our member states. So a high-level mission was undertaken, mediation mission was undertaken by a team led by the President of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, under, of course, the chairmanship of Ellen Sirleaf Johnson. Coupled, we use a carrot and stick, mediation, and of course use of force to get Jammeh out and install the rightful owner of the mandate of the people, which was President Adama Barrow.
This combination of political will from our leaders to be able to diplomatically lead the process the way they have done it, but also having in mind that we should also use military means as a kind of threat. In French, I would have said it's like a diplomatie de la carotte et du bâton. You have the carrot and then the stick.
Though Jammeh vowed that he would only relinquish the presidency if the court upheld the election result, Jammeh was warned by ECOWAS to step down by midnight of January 17, 2017. Jammeh refused to step down and the deadline passed.
At the end of the day, till like early January, he still did not accept the result. However, with the intervention of the chairperson, Madam Sirleaf, as well as the former president of Ghana, Mahama, and Nigerian President Buhari, they had to kick into action on 3rd by mediating again. Finally, by 16th of January, we had to use what we call the stick.
On the 19th of January, Senegalese troops entered the Gambia. The United Nations Security Council approved a resolution backing Barrow while calling on Jammeh to step down. It backed ECOWAS's efforts to ensure that the results of the 2016 presidential election were respected by using political means first. Senegal halted its offensive to allow mediation of the crisis one final time, with the invasion to proceed at noon on 20th of January if Jammeh were to refuse to relinquish power. During the early hours of the 21st of January, Jammeh announced on state television that he was stepping down from the post of president and left the country later on the same day, traveling to Guinea and then Equatorial Guinea.
I was there in the Gambia the last night of the negotiations with Yahya Jammeh. I was there in the room for the negotiations, and I was part of the team that actually saw Yahya Jammeh off onto his flight out of the Gambia. That was really the culmination of all the efforts that we had, and that was the most exciting moment, because you could feel it then, the thrill from the people, you know, the freedom, the air of freedom was felt everywhere in the Gambia. A big relief, fresh air as we call it, a big relief that at least one sad chapter of that country had come to an end. I felt very proud. I felt that we have done something that nobody has done. You know, removing the peaceful way it went about without any shed of blood was also something that honestly we were grateful for, because all indications at that time were that Jammeh would stay put and would also use whatever means.
For me, it senses very high responsibility, because countries like Nigeria, Senegal, just mobilized by their own means all this deployment, military deployment, while others were, I'm sure, supporting. But when you see the cost of this intervention for Nigeria, especially Senegal is more closer. When you see the cost and implication for Nigeria, you just say, yes, we are really moving towards kind of political integration of the region, resolving our own problems. Nigeria has no interest to go to the Gambia, but to respect what has been decided by the community.
It was quite a challenge. This is the first time that ECOWAS has undertaken such a mission. And I think ECOWAS will be remembered for restoring constitutionality in the member state.
I give you the instance which I like a lot to talk about is Burkina Faso.
In June 2014, Blaise Compaoré's ruling party, the Congress for Democracy and Progress, CDP, called on him to organize a referendum that would allow him to alter the constitution in order to seek re-election in 2015. Otherwise, he would be forced to step down due to term limits.
It was said the people did not agree to this. 27 years of rule is enough, and so on. Whereas the head of state, Compaoré, was somehow what he wanted to do was allowed by the constitution of his country. But when we saw what could be the challenges that would be coming from this as consequence, we, of course, alerted the president of the commission. And I recall for the first time, because I've been there from the beginning, for the first time that the president of the commission was writing back to us and saying we should do a letter to the chairman of the authority because he saw that the recommendations that were put there was very, very significant. And of course, a letter was done, accompanied with the report of the trip we took to Burkina Faso 8 months before all those happened. And he carried this to the chairman of authority, who called on other heads of states. And they had a meeting in Washington, over the Burkina Faso issue. But the President Compaoré, refused, the mediation because he said what he was doing was allowed by the constitution of his country. And finally, what happened, happened. But it didn't mean that early warning didn't do its work.
The military, under General Honor Traoré, announced that it would install a transitional government in consultation with all parties and that the National Assembly was dissolved. On the 31st of October 2015, Blaise Compaoré announced he had left the presidency.
I've decided to leave power in light of the tragedy facing my country.
This and some other things also led us to the time in we started to think that we should put a more robust mechanism, in order to better link early warning, and early response.
The new challenges are many. You notice that when we are talking of election, for example, in the region, it's always a matter of concern.
I can't think of an ECOWAS member state, perhaps for maybe Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, with the exception of those two countries. I think the farmer hurdle problem has been a major headache for the sub-region. I would also put, on the front burner violent extremism. These two issues need to be dealt with. These two issues have been devastating, and they've actually come to the fore in less than 10 years, so for the past 5-6 years.
We have, the member states have agreed to tax themselves $1 billion over a period of 5 years, to tackle the issue of terrorism within our member states. But I still think that greater effort, apart from the 5% that 0.5% that member states contribute, because of the importance of preventive diplomacy, I think more can be from the budget of ECOWAS, maybe additional amount, maybe about 5%, could also be allocated to the Department of Political Affairs, Peace and Security for mediation efforts.
The road to peace in West Africa has been a long and windy one. It is crucial to have a vision for peace and security in the region in 10 years' time, a key to success. But is the ECPF still relevant?
Although it's 10 years, but a lot of it, all the components have not really been implemented. It has not been exhausted. It is still very, very relevant. It's a question for me of implementation, getting the right staff, putting the mediation division, in its right, place it appropriately within our structures, giving it that focus, that attention that it deserves.
The document is still relevant. And I think it can be updated in some area. But before then, we need to use it really.
Whoever thought conflict was going to be a problem within the region. Whoever thought, security was going to be a challenge within the region at some point? We all never did. But then as we evolve in terms of developing our policies, our decisions and all that, we have to look at the situations of the time and constantly review the documents we have.
I think it is still relevant, and I believe the current efforts being made to operationalize it, to have all the components on board, are very, very useful, are very key. And I think we should continue and focus on ensuring that we kind of get all member states and get a very good monitoring and evaluation system in place so that everybody is on the same page.
I think that we still have to update, but not like they are relevant. What is actually missing is the implementation, the knowledge of the ECPF itself, as that there is actually a conflict prevention framework which other states are supposed to build upon. They are not supposed to reinvent the wheel if we already have an ECPF. So what are we doing to enlighten member states and actors within the member states on the existence of the ECPF and how they key into it?
You can't have a perfect document. You can't possibly have a document that would predict what would happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So in that sense, there may be the need to have a sort of revised, a sort of addendum, to the framework. But as it is, I must say that if it's implemented effectively, if it is operationalized even the way it is, as it was crafted in 2008, you would help in preventing most of the conflicts that you have in the sub-region today.
Peace, they say, is a process, not an event. This means that as long as the threat of conflict persists, the ECPF must continue to evolve to meet and overcome those threats.
Streamlining between the Commission and the Member States as far as the implementation of the ECPF is concerned will go a long way towards ensuring peace and security in our sub-region. So it's a very effective tool, and I think it's one of the best initiatives that have come at the Commission in the last 1 decade.
If we do not exchange ideas in terms of the key thematic areas we have identified, we do not exchange ideas, we may have even left, some out. So it's very important for us to involve all key stakeholders, identify them wholly, and also make sure that we broaden discussions on some of these challenges we are having within the region.
That's the key thing, because if you don't have this institutional structure, then you will not be able to drive any interventions on the ground. Now, with that strong institutional structure, we've been able to, have policy frameworks, that drive the women, peace and security agenda, both at the regional and at the national level, and to help us relate at the continental level and also with our member states at, at the national level, and then trickling down to the community level.
If ECOWAS can be flexible, if ECOWAS can adopt a serious lessons learned approach, if it can partner more with civil society, if it can partner more with its member states, I think the sub-region will be better for it.
One of the key elements within the conflict prevention framework is to manage the natural resources in a manner that it benefits to all our citizens.
Each of the governments in West Africa should make sure that the basic essential things are provided. Basic education to the university level, and necessary accommodations, affordable, are provided, and people are not living in abject poverty.
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais donc finir au nom du président de la Commission, son Excellence Jean-Claude Cassibrou, et de tous les commissaires de tous les départements de la CEDEAO, dire merci à tous les partenaires qui nous accompagnent dans le cadre de ce qui relève de mon département, à savoir la gestion et la prévention des conflits. Dire merci à tous les collaborateurs.
ECOWAS must remain resilient in its mission to strengthen the security architecture of the region. it must make strong efforts to directly improve the lives of ECOWAS citizens and bring about peaceful coexistence in West Africa.